to tell you guys about a dream that I had a few years ago. So, my name's Matt, and I am a preacher's kid. So, when you're a preacher's kid, some of them gets a little ornery, and I've done mine. But having said that, when I got a little older, I was wondering if all this is even real. Is this true? Gospel, Jesus, God, creation, is this even real? I had my questions and doubts. And so I was kind of at a low point in my life where I need to know for sure. So I had this doubt in my heart for a while, probably a year or better. I was really going through it. Or am I just serving the Lord because of Grandpa and Grandma done it, my mom and dad done it, and so therefore I'm just born into it, and so just believe in like we do. But being stubborn, I didn't. So went to bed one night and fell into a deep dream. I don't know if it was an out of body experience or was it just a dream, a vision. I don't know. To this day, I still don't know. But anyway, I was in heaven, and I was sitting on these rolling hills, smaller type rolling hills. Everything was perfectly, done up, and so I was sitting on these rolling hills, and I noticed that there was daylight, but there was no sun. And it seemed like every time I had a question, I had an answer immediately. And I noticed that it was daylight like high noon, but there's also no daylight. There was no sun. So couldn't explain that. And then all of a sudden, it came to me, the gods of the light. And I noticed there wasn't even no shadows. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm sitting in this grass, and I'm sitting down, and I'm looking at this grass, and I'm just kind of moving it with my hand. I noticed this grass was about 1.5 inches tall, and it was perfectly grown. It wasn't manicured, it was grown. And so therefore it got to about 1.5 inches, and it came sharp, and it was beautiful grass, and everything was the same. It was not cut. There was no weeds. It was perfect. Everything is absolutely perfect, because anything that's not perfect is sin. And so I sat there and I was looking at that grass, and I rubbed my hand across this grass like this as I was sitting there, and I rubbed my hands across it. As I rubbed my hand across this grass, I noticed that it was praising God. And it sounded like 10,000 angels singing a hymn or praise and worship. And, I'd rub it like this, and I could just hear it singing, because everything praised God. Everything praises God in heaven. And so I got up, and I started kind of walking towards my left, if you will. And kind of walking down the grass and over the next little small hill. And then so over in front of me, I ran into what appeared to be like a depot of some sort. A depot where, like a bus depot or something like that, where people was checking in and checking out, whatever. And so I was sitting there, and I was watching people coming from basically all four corners, and they'd all go to this depot, and they're just kind of standing around. And all of a sudden, in the distance, I could see, the only way I know how to describe it is maybe a clear bubble, like if you're blowing bubbles with soap. It was just a small bubble in the distance, and as it got closer, it would kind of swoop in, and somebody would step out of it. I said, what in the world is this? So I'm in heaven. These are souls coming to heaven, someone that may have passed away, a car wreck, etc. But the saints and the loved ones knew that they were on their way. So I watched that for a while, and I watched several souls come in, and as the souls came in, and then they met their loved ones, and they was hugging and greeting, and then, they had head off. And I watched that over and over. So as the last people that arrived there at the depot and their loved one came in and they was hugging and all this, and then they started traveling down this road, which I couldn't see the road from where I was standing. So I just kind of cut across shorty, if you will, and went over there to this road and I found it. And this road was, I don't know, 12, 15 foot wide, and it was made of gold. This gold is like nothing I've ever seen before because it was almost transparent, so pure gold that we don't have stuff like that here. 24 karat is not as pure as what this seemed to be. And so I took this road towards the city. I could see people up there, and everyone's wearing white robes. I don't know, but the robes that I noticed didn't have no stitching and they wasn't wrinkled. I couldn't even see the fabric. It was so perfect. The finest linen that we have here would not compare to these robes that everyone has on. So as I got on into the city, I was kind of going on a zone incline, and it was curving back to the left as I was inclining, and there is a wall about 4 foot tall. And I'm starting to get into the city, and there's a lot of people there. And everybody there is almost like I was invisible, maybe. I was just getting a glimpse of what heaven is like. But anyway, I noticed that everybody was very nice and kind and generous and loving on each other and compassion on one another and just love. The whole thing was love. That's all it was love. Kind of like you wished that we treated each other half the time. But anyway, I was going uphill and had a sidewall over here, and it's on about 4 foot tall. And I noticed that there was three to four female angels, and they were in the same robe, linens, whatever. And they were just standing there, and they was chatting with each other. And so as their robes came down, it was exposed, their bellies was exposed. And so I'm thinking, why is their bellies hanging out? This is not making any sense. But their bellies was also transparent, and each one of their bellies was a baby. And so these female angels were pregnant, which didn't make any sense for a moment. And then the Lord revealed to me that these were like surrogate mothers for babies that wasn't born here on earth, either through stillborn or just losing a baby, or I think they call it a tubal, or an abortion as well. So no matter what, if you lost a baby or even abortion, these babies are fine. They're in heaven with God the Father. And so I just sat there and I was kind of in awe, and I can't explain to you the presence. So if I say words like awesome or I was in awe or crazy, we don't have the words. We don't even have the language to describe what I saw. 24 letters is not enough. It's not enough to describe it. And me using approximately 10% of my brain, I can't even explain to you what I saw. But it was wonderful. It was heaven, literally. And so I toured the city a little bit more, and then I woke up. So I woke up in the middle of the night, and I gasped. I was out of breath. I couldn't breathe. The air was so perfect and so clear and so clean that when I woke up in my own house, the air that I was breathing was polluted with sin. Sin is in the whole world. The sin is in the air. I couldn't hardly breathe, and I was coughing and carrying on, and finally I got where I could breathe this thick, polluted air again. And again, it was nighttime, and I looked to my left, and I saw my wife laying there asleep, and I could barely see her. And I knew in the other bedroom was my two sons, Devin and Wade. And they were in the bunk beds. My life's complete. I'm married. I have 2 kids. I have a job. Things are good. But I instantly fell into a spirit of depression within seconds. I could not believe that I was stuck back here. I'm back here. I thought I'd already made it. I thought my race had been won, but yet I'm back here, and it's depressing. And I'm with my wife and my 2 sons, and I could not believe it. And so I couldn't even tell the story for, maybe a couple of weeks. I just couldn't tell the story. It was too emotional. It was too real. And to tell the story, it was so emotional that I couldn't even tell the story without crying or breaking down or a lump in my throat, because heaven was so wonderful. And one part that I left out that's so wonderful, and as I was walking down the streets of gold, I noticed that there was a strawberry patch, and it was something that the finest painter in the world couldn't paint this picture of this strawberry patch. And so I reached over there and I got one of those strawberries and took one of those strawberries and stuck it in my mouth. It wasn't for nourishment. It was just for pure pleasure. And that's what heaven is all about, is just pure pleasure, worshiping and praising God. So after I got over my depression the next day and kind of back to what I know as reality, and after a couple of weeks, I told my kids what had happened. I told my wife and told some family members, and I was able to get it out without breaking down. And so I felt the need to put this on video and show people that may have questions in their own life. And is God real? Is this whole religion thing, is it real? Is there a heaven? Is there a hell? I assure you there is. And another question you may have about your babies, you may have lost some babies due to stillborn or however, and your babies can go up to 20 years old. But as far as your babies, if they're not born here, I assure you they're born in heaven. And even if they're aborted, it doesn't matter. They're with God the Father. So don't carry that guilt forever. God will forgive you, and your babies are in heaven. So I just felt the need to spend some time and just tell you guys that heaven is for real. Thanks for watching.
And my soul is heaven bound. Yes, it's